miles underground, and only 2 wrong turns at Albuquerque.
Good thing you spent all summer working on your digging arm, Babs.
We did it, Buster! We're at Acme Looniversity!
As you may know by now, if you've been watching the channel long enough, Tiny Toon Adventures is one of my favorite cartoons of all time. I am a huge fan of the original series. This is an anime series that I have seen many times throughout the 90s. So upon learning that Warner Brothers was reviving it, I was beyond excited. But unfortunately, this also came with some skepticism. Let's be honest, when these studios try to remake or reboot an IP that many fans adore, they end up straying so far away from the material that it loses all of its charm. Whether changing aspects of the characters that made them great to shoving ideologies upon the viewer that they don't want to see, these can make or break the experience of reliving nostalgia that's repackaged for modern times. So, how does Tiny Toons Looniversity fare in this aspect? Well, let's take the intro for instance. Upon seeing it the first time, I have to say that it was a very good updated rendition of the original theme song. I was quite surprised, to be honest. It felt quite familiar in terms of the instrumentation of the theme itself, but also remixed in a way that you can tell it was a different song altogether. This goes for the intro as well. Besides the animation being new, of course, the intro is this combination of the original theme and restructured assets. It just looked modern but familiar at the same time. This left a very good impression on me. As for the character designs themselves, they looked very modern. Buster now sports a hoodie. Every character looks very upscaled, like the title of the show implies, that they are actually in college. The original didn't really nail that aspect clearly. It always felt like they were in high school. Here, they make sure that you know they are in a university, even down to the song mentioning that they are paying school loans. Very neat touch, but that was only the intro. So what about the episode itself? Well,
What's the T stand for? JK, I don't have a middle name, but if I did, it would be Thunder! I'm Babs Bunny.
premiering on September 14th, 1990, which not only premiered 23 years ago, but also its anniversary 4 days after the reboot's debut. Steven Spielberg, along with Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, set out to reinvent the Looney Tunes shorts and bring them to new audiences. The series took place at Acme Looniversity, where those same Looney Tune characters were professors and mentors to their new counterparts. Buster Bunny, Babs Bunny, Plucky Duck, Dizzy Devil, and Hampton J. Pig were counterparts to Bugs Bunny, Honey, Daffy Duck, Tasmanian Devil, and Porky Pig, respectively. The series ended up being a huge success and went on to have a total of 98 episodes across 3 seasons. Now they are reborn for a new audience once more. This episode sets out to bring the viewer into the fold as it quickly introduces its setting. They really meant it in the intro. This is Tiny Toons Looniversity. We are introduced to several Looney Tunes characters doing professor things and other stuff around the campus. This is quite the opposite of the original series premiere episode, which had an animator drawing the entire world of Acme Acres and Buster trying to save it from getting canceled. Here we get Buster and Babs voiced by Eric Bauza, who had previously voiced Woody Woodpecker, and Ashley Hairston respectively, arriving on the campus through their underground burrowing. This was quite a clever nod to the Bugs Bunny shorts with a reference to Albuquerque to boot. Here we see the first change to the series. See, in the original series, Buster and Babs
No relation.
were presented as boyfriend and girlfriend, or mostly friends to one another. But in the reboot, that goes out the window. That famous running gag is gone, the one that gave them a certain charm. In the reboot, they are now twins. Yes, brother and sister. Now, I have to be honest. The new dynamic doesn't sit well with me. I can presume their dynamic was changed because it can provide more ways to tell stories between them in future episodes. But if that's the case, the original series managed to do that a great majority of the time. I can only rationalize that they did it just to make the series brand new in every aspect. This actually ends up being the basic premise of the episode itself, as Buster and Babs find out they are being sent to different dorms. The twins that had always been with each other at the hip now have to navigate college life separated from one another. This is handled decently in the episode itself, but somehow it just feels forced. The appeal of Tiny Toon Adventures was how different the characters were from their counterparts and from each other as a whole. Buster and Babs being inseparable siblings make the characters feel similar to one another because of it. Speaking of counterparts, this is also extended to the other characters such as Hampton, Plucky, and Sweetie. In the original series, Hampton is the quiet, food-loving neat freak. As for Plucky, well, he's the attention-seeking duck who has always been looking to get into some kind of scheme to be rich or a rival to Buster. But most of the time, they were just friends. Sweetie was the cute bird with a devious side when it came to dealing with Furball, of course. In the reboot, they are presented as college archetypes. Sweetie is the rebellious punk rock bird that should have had a middle name. Plucky is borderline arrogant and abrasive, just like he's entitled to something. And Hampton is now a pig who lacks confidence in himself, trying to live up to the potential of his mom, who appears to be a rich single mother that expects a lot out of him, but instead he wants to be a medical student. I can say that they are presented interestingly, but they also lack charm in the process. I can't understand that the creators wanted to give the reboot a fresh new coat of paint, but it's at the sacrifice of the charm that the original cast of characters had. As for the premise of the episode itself, it has Buster and Babs trying to get put into the same dorm room together. I like the nod to the dorms being named after the cartoon studios and shorts themselves. For instance, Babs stays in the Merry Melodies dorm. That was such a nice nod to the classic tunes. Those little details go a long way. Soon enough, Babs and Buster meet Sweetie and Plucky respectively. While things go well for the former, things don't bode so well with the latter. I would like to add that this was quite predictable. This is a new trope that has popped up in recent years where they have to portray male characters as either juvenile or intolerant people to be around. This is the dynamic they went through with Buster and Plucky. For me to see it a mile away shows how unimaginative the writers went about it. Almost immediately, Plucky is presented as arrogant and abrasive, which wasn't what he was in the original series. Sure, he was a bit self-centered at times, but he was mostly good friends with everyone around him. This trope really needs to die off fast. It also doesn't help matters that Buster is presented as the needy brother who is squabbling, while Babs ends up realizing that she can manage without living with Buster through an arm wrestling match with Granny, who is now the dean of the university. It just felt so one-sided, as Buster had nothing going on for him in the episode except his rivalry with Plucky. We are also introduced to Shirley the Loon, who is surprisingly the most accurate transition to the reboot. She is spacey, meditative, and weird. That's definitely her, except she has square-shaped glasses and earrings. The episode has the Tooners trying to compete in a gag competition so they can win the prize of being placed in the Freshman Hall of Fame. This is where another problem arises in the episode: the jokes. The premise of the series makes literal sense, but it takes itself way too seriously. This in turn affected the jokes. These made them quite unfunny. I know that many have a different perception of what's funny, but when something is clearly trying too hard to be funny, instead of it being natural, you notice the setups, gags, and jokes. You expect them to come right where you think they will. This is the case presented in this episode. In several instances, the episode tries to point out their humor is funny or hamming jokes. Tiny Toon Adventures never had this issue because everything from the episode structure to the jokes and references was always random. Here you see everything come at you, even down to who wins the competition. It doesn't really take much of a guess who actually wins it, but it's how he wins that is an example of how trite the humorous setups were in the episode. To top it off, we get a musical to end the episode. This was the only random thing in the entire episode, so that was greatly appreciated by me. Despite what I said about the episode so far, there's one aspect of the episode that shines: the animation. Tiny Toons Looniversity is well animated. The characters always move so fluidly, and it was quite vibrant and colorful. Just seeing it not only in HD, but also in a wide ratio would have been something that I would have loved seeing back in 1990. You can just tell that this series was very well budgeted, considering the mishaps Warner Brothers has been going through their animation division. In other words, they really cared about the production of this series. There were some scenes where the characters had vibrant light shadows on them. Neon light reflects off of them as well. It goes to show you how far animation has gone over the years. Tiny Toons Looniversity is a very good looking cartoon. Definitely a feast on the eyes.
Old-fashioned way. Gasp!
Tiny Toons Looniversity is definitely an example of a modern reboot, but is it a good one? Well, from what was presented here, I honestly have to say no. Its execution is the prime example of what's wrong with rebooting something beloved by fans of the original IP. In changing what made the source material great in the first place, it always has a higher possibility of losing its charm and uniqueness in the process in an attempt to bring in a new audience that is unfamiliar with the intellectual property. Unfortunately, this is the case with Tiny Toons Looniversity. The episode presents the characters as archetypes of college students, and that's where the charm is lost. It takes itself too seriously. The writer of the episode tried to make everything in the episode funny to the point where it actually comes off as predictable and not quite humorous. From the flat meta jokes and trite humor to the portrayals of the classic Tiny Tooners, Tiny Toons Looniversity falls very short of its mark in its premiere episode. If you are expecting Tiny Toon Adventures just as you remembered it in the 90s, expecting the same feel and charm, you are going to be very disappointed. This is not Tiny Toon Adventures at all. This is a facsimile of the series we knew and loved. Sure, the characters are there, but they are too different to warrant any kind of nostalgic feel from them. The series seems to be what the title of the show implies. Toons navigating college life to learn how to be great. But if this episode is any indication of the direction of the series, of where the series is going, let's just say that you will be soon trying to find a way to get the original series on DVD. Let's hope they do better from here on out. Let's certainly hope so.
Of a legend.
You're a Seinfeld. You were born funny.